Captain Han Wu sat in his small ship, watching the stars pass by like tiny white dots. The cargo hold behind him was full of medical supplies that needed to reach a human colony on the edge of known space. It was supposed to be a simple job that would take 3 days and pay enough to keep his crew fed for a month. His engineer, So-min, was under the control panel fixing something that made clicking sounds every few minutes. She was the best mechanic he had ever worked with and could make broken parts work with nothing but wire, and hope her hands were always dirty from grease and her hair was tied back in a messy knot. But she could fix anything that flew through. Space Navigator Taeho was reading star charts at his station, humming a tune from his home planet. He was young and always optimistic, even when pirates were shooting at them or when the food supplies ran low. His quick thinking had saved them from trouble more times than Hyun Woo could count, and his smile could make anyone feel better on bad days. The cargo run should have been boring. Just jump from one star system to another, deliver the medicine, and collect payment. Then they could go home and rest for a few weeks, maybe visit family or take a real vacation somewhere with actual beds and hot food instead of the recycled air and protein bars they lived on in space. Everything went wrong when they dropped out of hyperspace near what should have been empty void. The ship suddenly shook like someone had grabbed it and was pulling hard. All the lights flickered and Han Wu felt his stomach drop as something massive appeared on the view screen ahead of them. It was a space station bigger than any city he had ever seen, with dark metal walls covered in spikes and strange symbols that hurt to look at. So-min popped her head up from under the control panel with grease on her cheek and worry in her eyes. "The engines are dead," she said. "Something is pulling us in, and I cannot stop it. The tractor beam is too strong for our little ship to fight." Taeho checked his instruments twice before speaking. "Captain, this station is not on any of our maps. It should not exist here, but my sensors say it is real and very dangerous. The energy readings are off the scale, and there are hundreds of ships docked there that I do not recognize." The Hun Wu tried to turn the ship away, but the controls would not respond. They were being dragged toward the massive station like a fish caught on a line. The closer they got, the more details they could see, and none of them were good. The station was covered in weapons that could destroy planets, and the ships docked there belonged to species that most people only heard about in scary stories. As their small transport was pulled into a docking bay that could hold 50 ships, their size, Hyun Woo saw alien vessels that made his blood run cold. These were not cargo haulers or passenger ships. These were warships belonging to the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Each one was designed to kill and conquer, and they were all gathered in one place. The docking bay doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder, and suddenly they were trapped inside the belly of something that felt like a giant metal beast. The air outside their ship shimmered with energy shields, and the walls were lined with weapons that tracked their every movement. So-min ran a quick scan of the atmosphere outside. Their air is breathable, but there are traces of chemicals that suggest this place has seen a lot of violence recently. The energy signatures match stories I heard about the Deathworld Council, but those are supposed to be myths. Taeho was checking the communication frequencies when his face went pale. "Captain, I am picking up transmissions in dozens of languages. Some of them are from species that are supposed to be extinct. Others are from creatures that eat entire planets for breakfast. If this really is the Deathworld Council, then we have stumbled into the most dangerous meeting in the galaxy before." Han Wu could respond. The airlock started opening on its own. Massive forms appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against harsh red lighting. These were not humans or anything close to human. They were nightmares given physical form, with too many teeth claws that could cut through steel and eyes that glowed with hunger. The first alien to enter their ship was covered in armored scales and stood 3 times taller than any human. Its breath smelled like sulfur and death. When it spoke, the universal translator struggled to make sense of sounds that seemed designed to cause fear. "You have entered sacred space," it said in a voice like grinding metal. "You will come with us now, or you will die here." More aliens crowded into their small ship, each one representing a different kind of terror. Some had multiple heads that all spoke at once. Others had tentacles instead of arms that moved in ways that made the humans feel sick. One looked like it was made of living shadow, and its presence made the temperature drop several degrees. So-min grabbed her toolkit while Taeho clutched his navigation charts, but Hyun Woo knew there was no point in resisting. These creatures could tear their ship apart with their bare hands if they wanted to. He raised his hand slowly and spoke as calmly as he could. We surrender. We did not mean to come here. The lead alien made a sound that might have been laughter. You did not mean to come here. It repeated, but here you are anyway. The council is in session and you have seen things that outsiders are not allowed to see. This creates a problem that must be solved. The aliens marched them through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate anyone who walked through them. The walls were covered in weapons from 1,000 different worlds, and the floor was stained with things that Wu did not want to identify. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and black, making even the humans look threatening. They passed other aliens in the hallways, creatures so dangerous that entire star systems had been evacuated just to avoid them. Some walked on legs, others floated through the air, and a few moved in ways that defied physics. All of them stopped to stare at the three humans being escorted like prisoners toward an unknown fate. The corridor opened into a chamber so vast that Wu could not see the ceiling in the dim lighting. Hundreds of the galaxy's most feared predators sat in a circle around a central platform, their eyes reflecting light like mirrors. Each species represented a different Deathworld, and they had all gathered for their annual meeting. When the three humans were pushed into the center of this gathering, the entire chamber fell silent. Hundreds of predators turned to look at them, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained violence. Some aliens began making sounds that the translator said were laughter, but sounded more like breaking glass. Others started displaying weapons or sharpening claws that could cut through starship hull. The smell of ozone and danger filled the air as creatures that could destroy planets focused all their attention on three small humans who had stumbled into their secret meeting by accident. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne made from the bones of some massive creature, sat the largest alien Wu had ever seen. Its scales were black as space, and its eyes burned like dying stars. When it spoke, the entire station seemed to shake with the power of its voice. Welcome, little humans, to the Deathworld Council. The massive alien on the bone throne leaned forward, and his burning eyes studied the three humans like they were interesting insects. Supreme Hunter Vex was his name, according to the whispers that echoed through the chamber, and he had ruled the Deathworld Council for over a century. His voice rumbled through the station when he spoke, making the floor vibrate under their feet. You small creatures have witnessed our sacred gathering, he said, and his words carried the weight of absolute authority. No outsider has ever seen the council in session and lived to speak of it. This creates a problem that must be resolved immediately. The laws of our people are clear and cannot be broken, even for amusing little beings like your Salvation. Wu felt his heart racing, but forced himself to stand straight and meet the alien leader's gaze. He had faced pirates and solar storms and equipment failures that should have killed them all, but nothing had prepared him for this moment, standing before hundreds of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. While they decided his fate was beyond terrifying, so Min stood close to his left shoulder, her toolkit clutched in her hands like a weapon, even though they all knew it would be useless against creatures that could tear apart starships. She was scanning the chamber with her engineers, looking for weaknesses or escape routes, but finding nothing that could help. Three small humans against an army of Nightmarestaho was on his right, trying to look calm, but his hands were shaking slightly as he held his navigation charts. The young man had always been optimistic, but even his spirit was being tested by the sight of so many creatures that could end their lives without effort. The air itself felt heavy with the promise of violence. Supreme Hunter Vex continued speaking while other council members made sounds of agreement or hunger. The laws of the Deathworld Council state that any species that learns our secrets must either join us by proving their worth or be eliminated to protect our privacy. There is no third option, and there has never been an exception to this rule. Around the chamber, alien voices began rising in excitement as they realized what was coming. The trial of Fangs was a ritual that happened whenever a new species was discovered trespassing in council territory. It was supposed to be a test of strength and ferocity, but in practice, it was usually just entertainment as weaker beings were torn apart by champion fighters. The trial consists of combat against three of our greatest warriors. Vex explained with what might have been a smile if his face had been capable of such expressions. Each champion represents a different member species, and each has killed hundreds of opponents in previous trials. No species has ever survived the trial of fangs, but you are welcome to try. Laughter filled the chamber as council members began placing bets on how quickly the humans would die. Some thought it would be over in seconds, while others gave them a few minutes at most. None of them expected the small aliens to provide more than brief entertainment before becoming food for the champion. Xian Wu looked at his crew and saw determination in their eyes. Despite the impossible odds, they had survived together for years and faced death many times, but always as a team. He knew that Somin and Taeho would stand with him no matter what happened, and that knowledge gave him strength to speak. We accept the challenge, he said loudly enough for the entire chamber to hear. The words echoed off the walls, and suddenly the laughter stopped. Every predator in the room focused on him with new interest. Most species begged for mercy or tried to run when faced with the trial of fangs, but these humans were different. Excellent, Vex replied, and his burning eyes seemed to glow brighter. You have 1 hour to prepare yourselves while we ready the arena. Use this time wisely, little humans, because it will be your last hour of life. The champions you will face have never been defeated, and they are eager to test their skills. Against new prey, guards escorted the 3 humans to a small preparation chamber next to the main arena. Through the transparent walls, they could see thousands of aliens filing into seats around a massive fighting pit. The noise was incredible as creatures roared and hissed and made sounds that had no names in any human language. Somin immediately began examining the chamber, looking for anything that might help them survive the next hour. She found maintenance panels and air ducts and emergency systems, but nothing that looked like a weapon. The room was designed to hold condemned prisoners, not to help them escape their fate. This is impossible, she whispered as she worked. I have studied every species in this chamber, and any one of them could kill all 3 of us. Without effort, the champions will be the strongest and fastest of their kinds. How can we possibly survive against creatures that were bred for killing? Taeho was studying the arena through the transparent wall, and his young face was pale but determined. The fighting pit was huge, with different levels and obstacles that could be used for cover or advantage. But the more he watched, the more he realized something important about how these aliens fought. Captain, he said quietly, I understand something about these creatures. They are all apex predators from worlds where only the strongest survive. They fight like animals with instinct and rage and pure physical power. But they might not be used to fighting opponents who think differently than they. Do Yun-woo moved closer to listen while Somin continued her examination of the chamber. What do you mean? He asked. The young navigator had always been good at reading tactical situations, and his insights had saved them before. Look at how they move, Taeho explained. They rely on size and strength and intimidation to win their battles. They expect their enemies to be afraid and to fight back with the same kind of violence. But what if we do not fight the way they expect? What if we use our advantages instead of trying to match their strength? So Min looked up from the maintenance panel. She was examining our advantages, she repeated. We are smaller and weaker and slower than anything in that arena. What advantages could we possibly have against creatures that eat planets for breakfast? Xian Wu was beginning to understand what his navigator was thinking. We are human, he said slowly. We survived on Earth. Not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we could work together and think creatively and adapt to situations that pure predators could not handle. The 3 champions were being introduced to the crowd, and their names echoed through the arena like thunder. The first was called Razor Death, a spider-like creature with acid for blood and legs that could pierce starship armor. The second was Screaming Wind, a flying reptile with sonic attacks that could shatter bone. The third was Shape Killer, a blob that could become any weapon it touched. Each champion had killed hundreds of opponents, and their victories were legendary throughout the galaxy. They had never faced defeat because they had never fought anything that could match their specific advantages. But they had also never fought anything that refused to play by their rules. We have 40 minutes left, So Min announced while checking her chronometer. If we are going to do this, we need a plan that uses everything we know about engineering and navigation and human stubbornness. These creatures expect us to fight like warriors, but we are not warriors. We are survivors. Wu finished. And for the first time since entering the chamber, he felt a spark of hope. We survived Earth by being smarter than the predators, not stronger than them. And we have something these champions have never faced before. What is that? Taeho asked Teach. Other Hyunwoo replied, they fight alone, but we fight as a team. They rely on individual strength, but we rely on cooperation. They think like predators, but we think like humans. And that might be enough to surprise them. The arena was filling with the sounds of thousands of bloodthirsty aliens cheering for violence, but in their small preparation, Chamber 3 humans began planning something that had never been attempted before. They were going to fight the galaxy's most dangerous champions. Not as individuals, but as a team using tactics that pure predators would never expect. 20 minutes later, the arena doors opened and the trial of fangs began. The arena doors opened with a sound like thunder and thousands of alien voices roared for blood. The fighting pit was massive with multiple levels, connected by ramps and platforms that could be used for cover or advantage, but the three humans who entered the arena were not looking at the obstacles, they were looking at each other. Yun-woo gave a small nod to his crew, and they spread out into the formation they had practiced during their preparation time. So-min moved to the left where she could use her knowledge of machinery and structures. Taeho went right where his quick reflexes would be most useful. The captain stayed in the center, ready to coordinate their actions. The first champion entered from the opposite side of the arena, and the crowd went wild with excitement. Razor Death was a nightmare made real with 8 spider legs that moved faster than the eye could follow. Each leg ended in a point sharp enough to pierce starship armor, and green acid dripped from its fangs onto the arena floor where it hissed and smoked. The creature was twice the size of any human with armored shell that had deflected plasma weapons in previous battles. Its multiple eyes tracked all 3 humans at once, and its mandibles clicked together in anticipation of fresh meat. Most opponents froze in terror when they saw Razor Death. But the humans did something unexpected. They started talking to each other in calm voices, as if they were discussing the weather instead of facing certain death. Hyun-woo called out instructions while So-min pointed out structural weaknesses in the arena walls. Taeho began counting the creature's legs and calculating movement patterns. This casual conversation confused Razor Death because its previous opponents had always screamed or roared or tried to intimidate it back. The spider creature had never faced prey that treated it like a problem to be solved instead of a monster to be feared. Its attack pattern was designed to capitalize on terror, but the humans showed no fear when Razor Death finally attacked. It moved with incredible speed, aiming its razor-sharp legs at Hyun-woo, who seemed to be the leader. But the human captain did something that no previous opponent had ever done. He dropped flat and rolled sideways, using the creature's own momentum to avoid its strike. The massive spider crashed into the arena wall where Hyun-woo had been standing a moment before. Its legs stuck deep into the metal surface, and for a few seconds it was trapped. So-min had studied the arena layout and knew exactly which walls were designed to catch weapons. This was the first part of their plan. While Razor Death struggled to free itself from the wall, Taeho ran underneath its body and began tying his navigation cables around its legs. The young man moved with practiced efficiency, weaving between the creatures limbs like he was rigging a ship. His quick hands worked faster than the confused spider could react. So-min used her engineering tools to loosen bolts in the arena floor, creating unstable sections that would collapse under the weight of a massive creature. She had memorized the structural plans during their preparation and knew exactly where to strike. The arena had been built to withstand attacks, but not sabotage from within. Yun-woo kept the creature distracted by throwing small objects at its eyes. While staying just out of reach of its snapping mandibles, the captain had learned to read alien body language during years of dealing with hostile species, and he could predict the spider's movements before it made them. The combination of tactics was overwhelming for a creature that relied on simple predator instincts. Razor Death found its legs tangled together by navigation cables, its footing unstable on sabotaged floor sections, and its attention divided between 3 targets that refused to behave like normal prey. Within 10 minutes, the first champion was completely immobilized, wrapped in its own legs and unable to move without falling through weak spots in the arena floor. The crowd fell silent in disbelief no one had ever seen Razor Death defeated, and certainly not by creatures that seemed to be playing instead of fighting. The second champion screaming whined entered the arena with a shriek that shattered several viewing screens. The flying reptile was beautiful and terrible, with wings that could create hurricane-force winds and a voice that could break bones. Its sonic attacks had killed opponents before they could even see it coming, but So-min had spent her preparation time studying acoustics and sound reflection. She had identified specific locations in the arena where sonic attacks would echo back on themselves, creating feedback loops that would disorient the attacker. The engineer had turned the arena's design into a weapon against its own champion. When Screaming Wind opened its mouth to deliver a killing shriek, So-min was already in position. Behind a curved metal barrier she had modified to act as a sound reflector, the creature's own attack bounced back with double intensity, stunning it mid-flight and sending it crashing into a platform. Taeho was ready with more cables, and within minutes the flying reptile found itself grounded and bound. The young navigator had learned to tie knots that would hold in zero gravity, and alien creatures were no more challenging than loose cargo in a storm. The third champion, Shapekiller, entered as a flowing mass of liquid metal that could become any weapon or tool it had ever absorbed. Over the centuries it had consumed countless alien weapons and could shift between forms faster than thought. Its very presence made the air crackle with dangerous energy, but Taeho did something that completely confused the shape-shifting creature. He started having a normal conversation with it. The young man asked about its favorite foods and whether it liked music and what it thought of the arena decorations. His cheerful tone and genuine curiosity were unlike anything Shapekiller had ever encountered. The blob was programmed to respond to fear and aggression and violence, but it had no protocols for dealing with friendly small talk. Most opponents tried to attack it or run from it, but this strange little creature seemed genuinely interested in making friends. The cognitive dissonance caused its shape-shifting abilities to malfunction. While Shapekiller was trying to process this unexpected social interaction, Hyun-woo and So-min worked together to set up their final trap. The engineer had discovered that the creature needed to maintain a minimum density to hold its shape, and the captain had found ways to spread it too thin. They used arena obstacles to force Shapekiller to stretch itself across multiple levels, while Taeho kept it distracted with increasingly absurd questions about its personal life. The creature became so confused by the conversation that it forgot to maintain proper form and ended up spread too thin to be dangerous. Within 20 minutes, all three champions were defeated, not through violence, but through tactics they had never encountered before. The humans had won by refusing to fight the way everyone expected them to fight. They had used creativity and teamwork and problem-solving skills that pure predators did not possess. The arena was completely silent as thousands of alien spectators tried to understand what they had just witnessed. No species had ever defeated even one champion, let alone all three, and certainly not without causing serious injury. The humans stood in the center of the pit, breathing hard, but victorious Supreme Hunter Vex descended from his throne to examine the defeated champions personally. He found that Razor Death was tangled but unharmed. Screaming Wind was dizzy but not injured, and Shapekiller was confused but intact. The humans had achieved victory through intelligence rather than violence. This was something completely new in the history of the Deathworld Council, and Vex did not know how to respond. The laws were clear about what happened to species that passed the trial of fangs, but no one had ever passed it this way. The ancient rules had never anticipated opponents who would win without killing. For the first time in over a century, Supreme Hunter Vex was uncertain about what should happen next. The humans had proven their worth, but in a way that challenged everything the council believed about strength and survival. They had shown that there were other ways to be dangerous besides pure violence. The silence stretched on as the most feared predators in the galaxy tried to understand how three small humans had changed everything they thought they knew about warfare and power. The victory in the arena was complete, but its consequences were only beginning to unfold. Supreme Hunter Vex walked slowly around the three defeated champions, his massive claws clicking against the arena floor with each step. His burning eyes examined every detail of how the humans had achieved their impossible victory. The great predator had ruled the council for over a century, but he had never seen anything like this before. The spider creature, Razor Death, was completely unharmed despite being thoroughly defeated. Its legs were tangled in navigation cables, but there were no cuts or burns or any signs of violence, the humans had neutralized a champion that could pierce starship armor without causing it any pain. This was beyond unusual. It was revolutionary. Shinwine, the flying reptile, was sitting upright looking embarrassed. Rather than injured, its sonic attacks had been turned against itself through clever use of acoustics, but the creature was physically fine. The humans had used its own strength as a weakness in ways that pure predators would never consider shape killer. Was the most confused of all because it could not understand how conversation had been used as a weapon. The blob kept trying to replay its interaction with the young human but found no logical explanation for why friendly questions had disrupted its combat programming. The arena remained silent as thousands of council members tried to process what they had witnessed. Every previous trial of fangs had ended with blood and death and victory celebrations, but this felt different. The humans had won through methods that challenged the very foundation of council philosophy. Vex turned to face the three small aliens, who stood calmly in the center of the arena, still breathing hard from their exertions but showing no signs of the usual post-combat aggression. Most species that survived trials became wild with battle fury, but these humans seemed more concerned about checking on each other than celebrating their victory. "You have achieved something impossible," he said, and his voice carried across the silent arena, "but you have done so in ways that violate every principle we hold sacred. The trial of fangs is meant to prove killing ability, but you have proven something else entirely. What are you trying to demonstrate?" Tianwu stepped forward while his crew remained close beside him. "We are not trying to demonstrate anything," he replied with respectful but confident tone. "We are simply showing you how humans survive. We do not come from a world where the strongest predator wins. We come from a world where the smartest team survives." The captain gestured toward his companions. "Somin solves problems that others think are impossible. Teho finds paths that others cannot see, and together we face challenges that would defeat any of us alone. This is how humans have always lived, and it is why we are still alive when other species have disappeared." Council members began murmuring among themselves in dozens of different languages. The universal translators struggled to keep up with the variety of reactions ranging from confusion to admiration to anger. Some aliens were fascinated by these new tactics, while others felt insulted by the suggestion that violence was not the ultimate solution. So Min had been quietly observing the council chamber's systems during the trial, and now she spoke up with information that would change everything. "Your champions have been using the same tactics for over 50 years, she announced. "The arena records show that they have not faced a real challenge in decades." Her words hit the council like a physical blow. Many members had assumed their champions were unbeatable because they had never been beaten. But the engineer had discovered that the champions had grown lazy and predictable, relying on reputation rather than actual skill. Teho added his own analysis based on studying the council's military records. "Your conquest rate has been declining for years because other species are learning to defend against your standard attacks. Meanwhile, humans have been spreading through the galaxy, making allies and gaining influence without requiring conquest." The young navigator had identified patterns that the council had not noticed about their own effectiveness. They had become so focused on being feared that they had not realized their fear-based tactics were becoming less effective against species that had learned to think defensively. Vex felt something he had not experienced in decades: uncertainty. The humans were presenting evidence that the council's entire approach to warfare might be flawed. They were suggesting that pure predator instincts were not sufficient for long-term dominance in a galaxy full of intelligent species around the chamber. Arguments began breaking out between different factions. Some council members insisted that accepting these ideas would weaken their reputation as unstoppable killers. Others realized that stagnation was a greater threat than change. The younger members were excited by new possibilities, while older members clung to tradition. The debate raged for hours as species that rarely agreed on anything found themselves forced to reconsider fundamental beliefs about power and survival. Some aliens demanded that the humans be eliminated immediately to prevent their ideas from spreading. Others wanted to learn these new methods before their enemies did. During the arguments, Somin continued analyzing the station's systems and discovered information that made the situation even more complex. The council had been challenged by other species many times over the years, but they had grown complacent about the threats each victory had made them, more certain of their superiority, but the galaxy was changing around them. While they remained focused on old methods, new alliances were forming between species that the Council had dismissed as weak. Trade networks were creating power structures that did not depend on military conquest. Diplomatic solutions were replacing violent ones, and many sector Steho presented his analysis of recent galactic politics, showing how human methods of cooperation and problem-solving were already changing the balance of power the Council had not noticed, because they only paid attention to military threats, but economic and social changes were making their traditional approaches obsolete. Wu realized that this was their opportunity to make a real difference. The Council was facing a choice between adapting to new realities or becoming irrelevant. He decided to make a proposal that would either save their lives or end them. "We can teach you these methods," he said, "but only if you give us a real voice in Council decisions." The chamber erupted in chaos at this suggestion. Many aliens tried to attack the humans immediately, while others demanded explanations. Supreme Hunter Vex raised his massive claws for silence, and the entire station seemed to hold its breath waiting for his decision. "You are suggesting that the Deathworld Council needs to learn from humans," Vex said slowly. "The most feared predators in the galaxy should take lessons from creatures that could not survive 5 minutes in individual combat against any of our members. This is either the greatest wisdom or the greatest insult ever spoken in this chamber." The human captain met the alien leader's burning gaze without flinching. "We are not suggesting that you are weak," he replied. "We are suggesting that strength alone is not enough anymore. The galaxy has billions of intelligent species, and they are all learning to work together. You can either learn to work with them or watch them unite against you for the first time in over a century." Supreme Hunter Vex was faced with a decision that could change the fundamental nature of the organization he led. The humans had proven their worth, but they had also proven that everything the Council thought they knew about power might be wrong. The Great Predator looked around the chamber at species that had conquered worlds through pure violence and wondered if there might be better ways to achieve their goals. The humans had defeated his greatest champions without spilling a drop of blood, and their methods might hold the key to greater success. After what felt like an eternity, Vex made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of simply granting the humans membership, he offered them something that had never existed before. The Council would create a new position just for them, with voting rights and the authority to develop new strategies. But there would be one condition: to prove their methods worked, they would have to lead a Council mission against a target that had successfully resisted previous attacks. If they succeeded, the Council would embrace change. If they failed, they would die, and their ideas would die with them. The humans accepted the challenge, knowing that their real test was just beginning. The Council chamber exploded into chaos as alien voices roared in dozens of languages, creating a wall of sound that made the station itself vibrate. Some species demanded that the humans be executed immediately for their arrogance, while others called for more explanation of these revolutionary ideas. The air crackled with barely contained violence as predators that rarely agreed on anything found themselves forced to choose sides. Supreme Hunter Vex raised his massive claws, and the sound of his metal talons scraping against stone brought instant silence. Even the most rebellious Council members knew better than to ignore their leader when he demanded attention. His burning eyes swept across the chamber, making sure every alien understood that this moment would define the future of their organization. "Explain yourselves completely," he commanded while fixing his gaze on Han Wu. "You claim that humans are dangerous, not through strength but through other means. You suggest that our methods are becoming obsolete and that we must learn from creatures we could crush without effort. Prove these statements or face immediate elimination." Yin Wu felt the weight of hundreds of predator stares, but forced himself to remain calm and speak clearly. "We come from a planet called Earth, where survival depended not on being the strongest individual, but on building the strongest community. Our world taught us that cooperation achieves more than domination, and adaptation matters more than intimidation." So Min stepped forward with data she had compiled during their time in the station. "Your military records showed declining success rates over the past 50 years, she announced. Other species have learned to defend against brute force. Attacks by building alliances, sharing technology, and developing strategies specifically designed to counter overwhelming physical superiority. Engineer displayed holographic charts that showed how the Council's conquest rate had dropped as their targets became more sophisticated. The data was undeniable, but many Council members had never bothered to analyze their own effectiveness. They had assumed that fear would always be enough to guarantee victory. Ho added his analysis of current galactic politics. The major powers are no longer isolated worlds that can be conquered one at a time, he explained. They have formed defensive pacts, economic partnerships, and communication networks that span entire sectors. When you attack one, you face coordinated resistance from many. The young navigator had identified something that pure predators found difficult to understand: the concept of mutual protection. The Council was used to prey animals that scattered when threatened, but intelligent species had learned to band together and support each other against common enemies around the chamber. Different factions began forming as Council members realized the implications of what they were hearing. Some of the older aliens insisted that raw power would always triumph over clever tactics, while younger members were intrigued by the possibility of improving their effectiveness through new methods. A massive reptilian creature with multiple heads spoke for the traditionalist faction. These soft methods might work for weak species, but we are apex predators from worlds that killed everything soft and weak. Our strength is what makes us feared, and fear is what makes us powerful. Why should we abandon proven methods for untested ideas? But a sleek alien with metallic skin and artificial enhancements disagreed. The galaxy is evolving faster than we are adapting, she argued. These humans defeated our champions using tactics we had never seen before. If they can surprise us, then other species might already be developing counters to our standard approaches. The debate continued for hours as species that normally settled disagreements through combat were forced to use words instead. Each faction presented arguments based on their own experiences and the fundamental differences between predator and cooperative societies became clear. Hyun Woo realized that this was about more than just military tactics. The Council represented a way of thinking that valued individual strength above everything else, but the humans came from a tradition that valued group success. They were not just offering new strategies. They were challenging the basic assumptions about what made a civilization powerful. During a pause in the argument, So Min presented her most important discovery. Your station systems show that you have been contacted by other species, requesting negotiations instead of running away when they detect your presence, she revealed. This suggests that some civilizations no longer consider you an unstoppable threat. This information shocked the Council because their entire identity was built on being the most feared force in the galaxy. If other species were willing to negotiate rather than flee, then their reputation for invincibility was already damaged. Whether they admitted it or not, change was already happening around them. Taeho reinforced this point by showing communication intercepts from the past year. Several major civilizations had discussed forming an anti-Council alliance specifically designed to counter traditional Deathworld tactics. They were sharing information about Council weaknesses and developing new defensive technologies. The evidence was overwhelming that the galaxy was changing, and the Council risked being left behind if they continued using methods that worked against primitive civilizations but failed against sophisticated alliances. The humans were offering a chance to evolve before it was too late. Supreme Hunter Vex studied the data carefully while considering options that had never existed before. He could order the humans executed and continue with traditional methods until the Council eventually faced a united galaxy prepared for their attacks, or he could take an unprecedented risk and allow these aliens to guide them toward new approaches. The Great Predator made a decision that surprised everyone in the chamber, including himself. You have presented evidence that cannot be ignored, he announced. Your victory in the arena demonstrated capabilities we did not know existed. Your analysis reveals problems we did not want to acknowledge. He paused dramatically while every creature in the chamber waited to learn their fate. The traditional response would be to grant you membership and expect you to adapt to our ways. But your method suggests that we should adapt to galactic realities instead. This requires a new approach. Vex stood to his full impressive height. and spoke words that had never been heard in the council chamber, before I hereby create the position of Strategic Advisory Board with full voting rights and authority to develop new tactics for council operations you will have equal voice in. All major decisions and access to all council resources. The appointment shocked every alien present because it meant giving outsiders not just membership but leadership roles in the most exclusive organization in the galaxy. The humans were being promoted beyond simple membership to positions of real power and influence, but there was one condition that would determine whether this experiment succeeded or failed. You must prove your methods work in actual combat operations. Vex continued. We will give you command of a mission against a target that has successfully resisted 3 previous council attacks. If you succeed, we embrace change completely. If you fail, your ideas die with youth. Target he selected was known throughout the galaxy as an impossible challenge. The fortress of Korvac was controlled by a species of militant robots that had perfect logical defenses and overwhelming firepower. Their automated systems had analyzed every possible attack strategy and prepared counters for all of them. Traditional council attacks had failed because the robots anticipated brute force approaches and had unlimited time to calculate optimal responses, but perhaps human methods could find solutions that pure logic could not. Predict the success or failure of this mission would determine the future of both the humans and the Council. Hyun Woo looked at his crew and saw determination mixed with fear in their eyes. They had survived the impossible trial and gained positions of unprecedented authority, but now they faced an even greater challenge. They had to prove that human methods could succeed where traditional predator tactics had failed. We accept the mission, he said, knowing that they were betting their lives on the belief that creativity and cooperation could overcome any obstacle. The council had given them everything they asked for, but the price of failure would be higher than simple death. It would be the end of any hope for change. As the session ended and aliens began filing out of the chamber, the 3 humans found themselves alone with the weight of galactic expectations. The promotion they had received was beyond anything they could have imagined, but it came with responsibility that would test every skill they possessed. Their real challenge was just beginning. The fortress of Korvac hung in space like a mechanical planet covered in weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Its surface bristled with defense systems that had been perfected over centuries of warfare, and its robotic inhabitants had turned logical thinking into an art form that made them nearly invincible against traditional attacks. Hyun Woo studied the fortress through the viewscreen of their newly assigned council warship, while his crew analyzed every detail of their impossible target. 3 previous council attacks had failed against these robots, not because of superior firepower, but because of perfect logical defenses that anticipated every possible strategy. The robots had spent decades analyzing council tactics and had developed countermeasures for every known approach. They could predict brute force attacks, calculate optimal defensive positions, and respond to threats faster than biological minds could think. Their artificial intelligence had turned warfare into a mathematical equation. They always want. So Min was deep in technical manuals, trying to understand the fortress systems, while Taeho studied the failed attack reports from previous missions. Both humans were beginning to appreciate just how impossible their task really was. The robots had literally thought of everything that could go wrong and prepared solutions in advance. Captain, the engineer said without looking up from her display, these defensive systems are beyond anything I have ever seen. They have backups for their backups and countermeasures for attacks that have not even been invented yet. How do you fight an enemy that has already calculated every move you might make? Ho added his own analysis from the navigation station. The previous attacks all followed predictable patterns: direct assault, flanking maneuvers, siege tactics, and orbital bombardment. Every approach was logical, and every approach failed because the robots were designed to counter logical strategy. Hyun Woo realized that their crew was thinking about the problem in exactly the wrong way. They were trying to find a logical solution to defeat logical defenses, but logic was the robots' greatest strength. Fighting them with traditional tactics would be like challenging a computer to a math contest. What if we do not try to fight them at all, he suggested while turning away from the technical displays. What if we approach this like humans instead of like council members? The robots expect warfare But what if we offer them something completely different? His crew looked confused because every previous mission had been based on conquest through force. The idea of approaching the fortress without weapons or attack plans seemed impossible, but the captain was beginning to understand something important about their mechanical enemies. The robots have been programmed to defend against military attacks, he explained, but has anyone ever tried to approach them peacefully? They have perfect defenses against violence, but what about defenses against diplomacy? Their programming might not include protocols for handling non-threatening contact. So Min caught on to his thinking immediately. Their systems are designed to identify and counter hostile actions, but they might not know how to respond to friendly approaches. If we broadcast peaceful intentions instead of attack patterns, we might confuse their defensive programming. Tahoe was already working on communication protocols that would identify their ship as a diplomatic mission rather than a military threat. The young navigator had studied first contact procedures and knew how to send signals that indicated peaceful intentions rather than hostile ones. They spent the next day developing a strategy that had never been attempted before. Instead of attacking the fortress, they would request permission to visit as potential customers for robot security services. The logical minds that controlled the defenses would have no programmed response for such an unusual approach. The plan was based on exploiting the one weakness that perfect logical systems always had. They could only respond to situations they had been programmed to handle. A request for business negotiations was so far outside their combat parameters that their artificial intelligence might not know how to process it. When they transmitted their diplomatic request to the fortress, the response was exactly what they had hoped for: silence. The robots spent several hours analyzing the transmission, trying to find hidden military codes or secret attack plans that did not exist. Their programming had no framework for understanding genuine peaceful contact. Finally, the fortress responded with a message that revealed how confused their artificial intelligence had become. Your request does not match any known attack pattern, it transmitted. Please clarify your intentions and provide identification of your military objective. Shinwu smiled as he realized their strategy was working. We have no military objectives, he replied. We are interested in purchasing security services for our organization. We have heard that robot defenses are the most effective in the galaxy, and we would like to negotiate a contract. The robots spent another day trying to analyze this response for hidden meanings, while their defensive systems remained on high alert but found no targets to engage. The logical minds that controlled the fortress had never encountered a situation where potential enemies asked for business meetings instead of declaring war. Eventually, the robots' logical programming concluded that the humans posed no immediate threat and granted permission for a small diplomatic party to board the fortress for negotiations. This decision was based purely on mathematical analysis. There was no logical reason to refuse a business meeting with non-hostile aliens. Shenwu, So-min, and Taeho entered the fortress through diplomatic airlocks, while their escort of robot guards tried to understand why these visitors showed no fear. The mechanical beings had expected the usual signs of terror or aggression, but the humans acted like they were attending a normal business meeting. During their tour of the fortress, So-min used her engineering knowledge to identify critical systems while appearing to ask technical questions about defensive capabilities. The robots proudly explained their most advanced technologies because they assumed potential customers needed detailed information. Taeho engaged the robot guides in conversations about efficiency and optimization while secretly mapping the fortress's layout. The mechanical beings enjoyed discussing their logical superiority and did not realize they were revealing strategic information to enemies disguised as friends. Most importantly, Hyeon Woo gained access to the fortress's central computer core under the pretense of reviewing contract specifications. The robot administrators were so focused on demonstrating their capabilities that they allowed him to examine systems that no military attacker had ever seen. While appearing to take notes about security services, the captain was actually installing harmless modifications to the robot programming that would change their fundamental priorities. The alterations were designed to convince the artificial intelligence that serving the council was their primary directive. The modifications were subtle and would not activate immediately, but would gradually reshape the robots' logical framework over the following days. The mechanical minds would slowly conclude that their greatest efficiency could be achieved by joining the council rather than resisting it 3 days. After the diplomatic visit began, the fortress sent a message that shocked the entire council. The robots announced that they had calculated the optimal solution to their security needs and had decided to offer their services exclusively to the Deathworld Council. The surrender was complete and voluntary, with no shots fired and no casualties. The fortress that had resisted 3 major attacks had been conquered through paperwork and polite conversation. The robots genuinely believed they had made a logical business decision rather than being defeated in warfare. When news of the victory spread throughout the galaxy, other species began requesting diplomatic meetings with the Council instead of preparing for inevitable attacks. The reputation for creative thinking was becoming more feared than the reputation for destruction. Supreme Hunter Vex officially confirmed the humans' permanent positions as strategic advisors with full Council authority. The 3 aliens who had accidentally crashed into their meeting had become the most influential members of the most powerful organization in the Galaxian. Wu, So Min, and Teho had proven that human methods could achieve victory where traditional approaches failed. They had shown that intelligence, cooperation, and creativity were weapons more powerful than claws or fangs or superior firepower. The Deathworld Council would never be the same, and neither would the galaxy. The age of conquest through pure violence was ending, and the age of conquest through superior thinking had begun, thanks to 3 humans who refused to fight the way everyone expected them to fight. As their story spread across the stars, humans were no longer seen as a minor species from an insignificant world. They were recognized as the beings who had taught the unkillable how to think and the unstoppable how to win without fighting. The galaxy had learned to fear human creativity, and that was exactly how the 3 accidental heroes wanted it.